outlining a 20-page report on Tuesday of the Make America Healthy Again Commission, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was asked by a PBS News reporter about if there was any discussion of mental health and firearms. In this response, R.F. Kennedy Jr. said something that seemed to have been debunked several times over, but we'll let you hear the entirety of what he said. Here he is.
You mentioned suicides, especially among teenagers. There is a debate over mental health and firearms in this country and the impact on children's health. Was there ever a discussion of looking at firearms and the health of our children related to that? So those two questions, pesticides and firearms. Thank you.
I'll answer the question. The firearms question, we're doing research. The firearms question is a complex question, and it's not an easy question. The violence is what we're concerned with. This sudden onset of violence that began in the 1990s, where people would do something that has never been happened in history, which is somebody walks into a school or a church or a theater and starts shooting strangers. We had lots of guns when we were kids. We had comparably the same number of guns. Nobody was doing that. We had gun clubs at my school. Kids brought guns to school and were encouraged to do so. And nobody was walking into schools and shooting people. And this is not happening in other countries. Switzerland has a comparable number of guns as we do, and the last mass shooting they had was 23 years ago. We're having mass shootings every 23 hours. Oh, there are many, many things that happened in the 1990s that could explain these. One is the dependence on psychiatric drugs, which is, in our country, is unlike any other country in the world. It could be, there could be connections with video games, with social media, there are a number of things, and we are looking at that at NIH. So we are doing studies now. We're initiating studies to look at the correlation and the connection, potential connection between over-medicating our kids and this violence, and these other possible co-founders as well.
Now, these claims have been debunked before by several people, including the Royal Society of Open Science and New Zealand's Massey University. Now, this answer came under attention because of Culture Crave's ex-post saying, quote, RFK Jr.'s claims mass shootings could be linked to video games. This has been widely dismissed, including studies from the Secret Service, Department of Education, and American Psychological Association. However, RFK Jr. did list several other factors that could be linked to school shootings, as one of them is psychological treatment and medication. Now, before I go any further into this, I want to specify that if you really do think the liberal media is friends to video games, MSNBC was the one that put on Jack Thompson in 2007 when he was trying to say that one of the school shooters at that point, I forget the incident that they put him on for, saying that he was going to be unsurprised if he looked in the kid's room and saw a Call of Duty game in his bedroom. That's the type of things we're dealing with. And now those same people are now saying, oh, well, violence in video games doesn't cause violence in real life. Well, you were the one who put the guy on that was trying to provide the link there, and he got disbarred as a direct result of that. So don't come to us saying that you're suddenly on our side when you were not on our side before. And that goes to say with conservative media, Fox News is just as bad as this. And we know the reason why they're doing this is because video games are a direct competition to television and the film industry. They don't want you to play video games and instead go watch a movie in the theater or watch a TV show on your TV screen. They don't want you to go into that alternative form of entertainment. So they want to villainize it any way they can, even if that means going low blow. So don't think that these mainstream establishment outlets are on your side. They are not. And these same people who were telling, oh, violence in video games doesn't cause violence in real life, are the same people, especially the video game journalism outlets, who put on Anita Sarkeesian and touted Zoe Quinn at us, shoved them down our throats, saying that sexism in video games causes sexism in real life. and they were citing things that are not sexist. How often were we getting shoved the tropes versus women in video games down our throats and saying we weren't allowed to criticize Anita Sarkeesian for anything, and we were called sexist for doing so, even if it was milquetoast constructive criticism, saying that, hey, she's lying about this certain game, or she's taking stuff out of context, or hey, she's stealing Let's Play footage. We weren't allowed to say anything bad about it. And let's not even get into what happened in 2014 and the people that were smearing all that and saying that we were not allowed to call people out nepotism or anything like that. Spare me all of this, because people like Kotaku and Polygon were touting that, oh, well, she's right about sexism in video games causing sexism in real life, when they weren't even being truthful about sexism in video games in the first place. If you are going to say that violence in video games doesn't cause violence in real life, you have to go all the way and say that neither does sexism in video games, perceived sexism in video games, I keep forgetting about that, does not cause this in real life. You can't say one is true and the other isn't true. So please spare me that. Now, as far as RFK Jr. is concerned, he is incorrect on this whole thing about video games causes violence in real life. He would be incorrect on this. However, and I've seen this so many times when it comes to this particular person, is that you really have to be careful what the mainstream media says that he actually said. Because they have done this ever since he became a candidate for the Democratic nominee a few years ago. It doesn't matter what he says, they will spin it to no end, to the point where they will not show you what he actually said. They will force you to take their word for it. And no, I do not agree with him on every single issue, but I'm willing to hear him out. I'm willing to say, hey, if you have evidence, if you have evidence support that something you said was true that was hidden from us from some time, and I don't doubt that there has been, then okay, let's hear him out. Let's hear what he has to say. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be correct, but the one thing that he has been correct is that government has been corrupt for years, and that goes with all sides, whether it be Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat, you name it, they are just as corrupt as anybody else. The only thing that changes is the color of paint that they have, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to play the full clip, so you hear what he actually had to say there. Now, from what I could hear, he's saying that, hey, we are looking into it. That could be one of the things. That could be something that they are looking into. Hey, this is something that we are looking into. That doesn't necessarily mean he believes it, but he's looking into it. Now, he could look at past studies saying, hey, this study is correct. And I would assume that it is correct. Now, there is one thing that you could attribute to video games, which is the competitive edge. Maybe that's what they're looking at, is that competitive edge, where if you're playing a game against somebody else, you want to win. You want to defeat that game. You want the challenge to be overcome. And so you get that adrenaline in your system. You get that competitive edge in your system. But that's not unlike something you would see out of somebody who's playing the sport, like a football game or a basketball game. They have that competitive edge. They want to win. But that comes down as soon as it's over, saying, hey, yes, good game. And they have sportsmanship, or in theory they do. Some people fail at that. And we've seen several times that some people do fail at having good sportsmanship. But in the majority of times, that comes from being competitive. And video games are a competitive thing. And that spike of adrenaline that people were saying, oh, well, that contributes to violence in real life. No, that's a competitive edge you're seeing. And I would love to maybe have a study that shows, hey, that's what we're seeing. And I don't think people who have seen these studies are in fact catching. Like, how much does that competitive edge flow through you? That would be interesting to see. But this whole thing about violence in video games causes violence in real life, no, I don't believe that. I think he would be wrong in that. However, I don't think he necessarily said that as a whole. I think he said that would be one of the things they would look into. He could also be talking about the social nature of some video games, like MMOs, where they have the chat rooms and you can talk amongst yourselves on voice chat. We've known those can be toxic as well, and in relation, that could be something that maybe people do get bullied and harassed in chat rooms and voice chat. Perhaps that's what he actually was referring to. He's not really known to phrase things in a way that he should phrase them, and we all fault at that sometimes, so I don't blame him if he didn't phrase that correctly. He's known to do that at some points in time. But yeah, that is something that he could refer to instead of what this article claimed he was referring to. And also the whole thing with medicines and stuff like that. Side effects might have something that we know. Faulty medicines are a thing that has happened throughout history. The polio vaccine was something that was faulty. They had to change that a few times over. They had that whole mess happen, and I might be glossing over that myself, not without going into too much detail of that. But it has happened. It has happened that some people might have put out something that they shouldn't have. And of course, psychological thing, we know mental health is not something that we've taken into account until most recently, but that is also something that needs to be looked into, and hopefully they do. However, with this particular thing, I disagree with RFK on this, and this is not the first time he's said this. He said this at a News Nation town hall meeting when he was running for the candidacy of the DNC, and we all know what came about that. But yeah, I would impose people, please be careful of what you hear from the mainstream media and of Reddit too, because I've seen that, especially the centrist subreddit, I've seen that particular subreddit being so against him. And for a subreddit that calls itself centrist, they're not exactly centrist as they used to be. So yeah, please be careful about just about everything you hear on the media about him, because it just seems like they go out of the way to twist what he's actually saying. That doesn't mean that we agree with him. That just means if we're going to disagree with him, if we're going to disagree and call him out, let's call him out for what he actually says, not what somebody else told us he said. Because I don't know what it is about him that they twist his words around more so than they do any other politician, and I'm not sure why they do that, but let's just be very careful here. And that's why, again, I showed you the full clip, so you get the actual information, not from somebody who is trying to smear somebody. Let's agree and disagree based on actual arguments and not something that was taken out of context. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Please leave a comment down below. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more videos. I will see you next time. Stay tuned for the next one. I hope you're here for the next one. Look out for mental health. And as always, to be continued.